Coming up in This Week in Computer Hardware, Raspberry Pi 2 GTX 960. It's a winner at higher resolutions. GTX 970, that 3.5 gigabyte memory thing tested in SLI. New ARM APUs, the end of Radioshack, and quite a bit more. It's all coming up next on Twitch.
Netcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
Bandwidth for Twitch is provided by CacheFly at CACHEFLY.com.
This is Twitch, This Week in Computer Hardware, episode 301, recorded February 5th, 2015. Raspberry Pi 2 is here. Woo!
This episode of This Week in Computer Hardware is brought to you by lynda.com. Invest in yourself for 2015. Lynda.com has thousands of courses to help you learn new tech, business, and creative skills. For a free 10-day trial, visit lynda.com/twitch. That's lynda.com/TWiCH. And by Naturebox. Naturebox ships great tasting snacks right to your door. Start snacking smarter with wholesome, delicious treats like roasted Peruvian corn kernels. To get your complimentary Naturebox sampler, visit naturebox.com/twit. That's naturebox.com/twit. And by Prosper. Prosper is a peer-to-peer lending marketplace which connects people who are looking to borrow money with those who have money to lend. Visit prosper.com/twit and receive a $50 Visa prepaid card when you get a loan.
Welcome to Twitch, This Week in Computer Hardware, Twit's weekly show that aims to bring you the most useful, most informative, most helpful, most engaging, and yes, ladies and gentlemen, most sparkling information and news and hands-on advice about hardware, whether it's desktops, laptops, tablets, cell phones, or what we like to call smartphones now, and occasionally even heartfelt commentary, such as our first story this evening. Joining me as always, Mr. Ryan Shrout. I am Patrick Norton. Ryan, how is the weather in Kentucky?
It's cold. It's pretty cold. Snowed last night. After our podcast at like midnight, everybody went home, slipping and sliding. But everybody made it apparently, so that's a plus. Because they all showed back up this morning, so that's all I can say. But it's still pretty cold. Still pretty cold. Glad I've got the remote start on the car this week.
More remote starters, please.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness, there is. It's been interesting to watch the reaction to this story, and I just had to put it at the top of the show for the sheer unbridled joy of getting all weepy about this. But Radioshack, as we know it, is finally done, or most likely done. They've been threatening it for a while. They finally filed for bankruptcy earlier today. Looks like they're going to do a deal with Sprint. Like Sprint might take over as many as half of the Radioshack locations. We've heard whispers of Amazon potentially taking some of them over. But they filed for Chapter 11 later on today. So they're going to show, I think it's, 1,500 to 2,400 stores go to its larger shareholder, according to the article on the AP Newswire, to its largest shareholder, investment firm Standard General, and they're going to close the remainder of the 4,000 U.S. stores. I don't know if that actually includes the 900 or so independent Radioshack stores, which if you haven't spent a lot of time in the smaller towns of America, you may have never seen sort of a combined Radioshack / drugstore or Radioshack / coffee shop. But they've been a fixture in the United States for decades. So it's going to be interesting to see what exactly happens. Okay, so Sprint's going to take as many as 1,750 of the Radioshack stores that Standard General is buying to put mini shops in. Sprint would be the primary brand, and it's a bummer, man. Sprint's been a fixture of my life. My first soldering experience involved a radio kit from Radioshack. Radioshack has saved me when I needed technology at desert races in the middle of nowhere. I've been buying parts for them for the build shows I've done over the last few years. I'm bummed. I'm really bumming about this. Do you care about Radioshack? Am I the only person that's particularly bummed about this?
Based on my Twitter feed, you were definitely not the only person that cares about it. I feel like this should have happened a while ago. Right. Didn't it like almost die, and then they branded it the Shack, and then it almost died, and then they branded it Radioshack again.
Yeah.
And then
Shack was a long time. That I will
You
call
know,
it a debacle.
like
But that was a while back.
we were attempting to build like some small project stuff here, and we went to Radio Shack and we bought a couple of things that were useful for it. So we will miss that outlet if and when that store actually closes, because you know Amazon, I don't think doesn't sell resistors.
Oh
You know,
no,
like
I'm pretty
well,
sure you can find them, but you can't
like
find
if
them
I
at
want to
4
buy
o'clock on a Sunday afternoon.
exactly. Exactly. So, you know, for those instances when you need that stuff now, it's going to be disappointing. Just like I would be disappointed if Best Buy's closed, not because I shop at Best Buy all the time anymore, but because that day I decided I wanted a new TV and I wasn't going to wait for over the weekend to end so I could order off Amazon. I just went to Best Buy and bought it, right? Or if I need something to do, if I need to buy a new iPad because I need to do benchmarks, I want to go pick it up today. I don't want to have to wait till tomorrow or whatever it is. Having that flexibility is there. So I think that's what you missed from Radio Shack, because I don't think people go into Radio Shack for advice anymore. I don't think those are the types of people that were employed at Radio Shacks. I think people that were working there were trying to upsell you on cell phone plans or something like that instead. So it's you know, I personally don't have as much of a personal story with Radio Shack, other than, you know, that's where I went for everything, you know, regarding computer accessories and adapters and cables before the internet was really a viable option for that. So, you know, I mean, it sucks anytime somebody's going to lose their job or a company closes, but I think everybody saw this coming for a while.
Yeah, I'm not going to argue that. It's funny. Like I just dropped a link into the show notes. You know, if you go to Amazon, like there's Amico 500 pieces axial lead metal film resistors, 1% 1 watt resistor substitution box. Amazon Industrial is pretty amazing if you want to buy some pretty random stuff. But yeah, I mean, we still have Fry's out here, but the nearest Fry's for me is like a 30, 45-minute drive, best case scenario.
Yeah, I've got a Micro Center, but it's a 45-minute drive at least one way for me as well.
Yeah, I mean, and that's part of one of the articles, and I've read probably every article, it seems, on Radio Shack in the last few days. You know, I think at their peak, there was literally a Radio Shack, like a 5 to 7 minute drive from like 90-something% of the U.S. population. And one of the things they pointed out is as smartphone sales skyrocketed, Radio Shack's revenue went down, in no small part because so many of the devices you would go to the Radio Shack to buy were, you know, in this. It's interesting. That pretty much leaves Best Buy as kind of the last electronics store standing.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'll miss it. Like I said, like first time I saw a computer outside of a lab, probably the first time I saw a computer was at a Radio Shack. You know, the TRS-80. With the inevitable recipe for mom application. That was the first time that's the beginning of a joke that's now been running in my head for like 30 years. Yeah, I'm bumming. I'm not particularly surprised either, but it's been such a fixture and so useful in so many ways. Weather radios. Where will I buy my weather radios?
Amazon still.
I suppose. And you should have a weather radio before the storm comes. In brighter news this week, I found out about this. I don't know. Michael, my partner in crime, on Die Trying, found the announcement on a UK website at like 11:30 on Sunday night. The Raspberry Pi 2 has been released. This is pretty awesome. You know, I'm waiting with bated breath for mine to arrive. It's a 900 megahertz quad-core ARM Cortex A7 CPU. They're claiming a 6x performance improvement, which is a really big deal. They believe this will actually function as a usable desktop now with a GUI. You know, gigabyte of SD RAM, completely compatible with the Raspberry Pi 1. It'll run the existing Raspberry Pi code base. They're going to experiment to see whether or not it's worth tweaking that in any significant way to try to get some better performance out of that ARM V7 processor. It's pretty cool. It's pretty cool. I'm really excited because $35 is not much for the amount of computing power you're getting here, and it was pretty crazy. Yeah. Oop, go ahead.
I was gonna say definitely not, and it's a significant increase over where it was at before, right? Like 6x should tell you a lot, but I mean, from somebody who's worked on those types of small projects. The fact that you even be able to run Windows on it is kind of a big deal.
Yeah.
Technologically. So,
quote, now that we're using an ARM v7 core, we can also run Ubuntu, a snappy Ubuntu core image basically shipped with the Raspberry Pi Model 2. And what's really crazy is Windows 10 is going to be available for basically you go to windowsondevices.com, join the Windows Developer Program for Internet of Things, and they will be dumping Windows 10 updates, which I'm pretty stoked about. Because the idea of having like a $35 Windows computer opens up a lot of possibilities. They're not getting rid of the Model B or the Model B Plus. For now, they're going to keep the A Plus, the $20 version, keep going. We'll keep going. Yeah, I'm pretty excited. And the 6X performance, they say the speed up varies between applications. They've seen single-threaded CPU benchmarks that speed up by as little as 1.5x. While SunSpider is around 4x faster, Neon-enabled multi-core video codecs can be over 20 times faster. In terms of something like a multi-threaded CPU benchmark, they're saying like 6x. And then if you want to figure out if it's really a full version of Windows 10, you can get more information on that in Windows on Devices. Which is interesting. It's essentially it really is a developer program to see what people can turn out of this. Obviously, like the Intel's Edison's not going to be running Windows, I don't think, in any meaningful way. But this is, I don't know. I'm stoked. Later this year is all they have in terms of Windows 10 availability. But Microsoft said a few weeks ago at the Windows 10, the big Windows 10 event, was that there's going to be one Windows 10. It's going to be running from the little things to the big things. And I was going to mention it later on, but Windows RT is officially dead. There will not be a Windows 10. They were talking about like maybe a limited version of Windows RT for Windows 10, but it looks like that possibility has fallen off the cliff. In fact, let me pull that article up. To the great dismay of dozens, I got to give props to Jeremy for perhaps the cruelest title I've read this year so far. To the great dismay of dozens, Windows RT finally passes on. Quote, and it's such a beautiful line, Mr. Hellstrom, I got to read this. Microsoft has quietly smothered the last Windows RT device on the market, spelling the end of the ARM-powered version of Windows. The non-pro versions of the Surface attracted sellers with very low price, but then repulsed them with the performance and lack of support for basic applications. So, yeah. Surface Pro 2 will continue to be produced. And then Jeremy notes that a Register article, basically Microsoft told the Register, this does not mean the end of Windows ARM by any means, but of course, there's going to be a version of Windows 10 for the ARM processors. Yeah, so the Nokia Lumia 2520, a 10.1-inch Windows RT tablet with quad-core ARM processor, HD display, and 4G LTE wireless connectivity is done. So once they're gone out of the channel, you will not be able to buy one. And kids, don't buy one because you can't run much of anything on it without a lot of work.
Support's going to be pretty close to zero. I think probably just like maybe we said we saw this coming for Radio Shack, we probably saw this coming with RT. Especially once you saw that it wasn't being updated at any significant capacity over the past couple of years. So no new products being released with it. I guess Microsoft's own Surface, they took the RT off of it, right? It was the last product to actually sell with it, I think.
Sounds about right.
Released with the Surface Pro 3, but it was just called Surface. So, yeah. Good riddance. Sure.
Yeah, and as soon as the Raspberry Pi 2 devices start showing up, we'll be doing builds on them. And, in theory, it could be a decent desktop. Not decent. Could be an incredibly low-cost desktop machine. So I'm excited about that. Yeah. Frame rating, GTX 970 memory issue tested in SLI. We've been talking about the 3.5 gigabyte GTX 970 there's 4 gigabytes. It's just split into 3.5 gigabytes and a half a gigabyte, which leads to particularly, can I call them horrendous or just painful issues when you try to max out or use all of the memory in the GTX 970. It does not like it. It slows down like 20. I think we're looking at 25% slowdowns.
Well, I mean, it depends on what you're comparing it to, right? So, I mean, last week we looked at the results in like a single GPU capacity, and we saw very little difference between the 980 and the 970 that kind of stood out to us in terms of more than you would expect to see performance differences. But the debate came up is like, okay, and I think we talked about it at the time. It's like, well, if you're gaming at 25 frames per second anyway, you shouldn't be doing that. So what's it matter? Well, readers came up and said, well, what if I'm running SLI? Now my 25 frames per second is maybe 50 or 45 frames per second. That's a much more playable frame rate. What does that affect there? So that's why we went back and we did some SLI testing with a pair of 970s and a pair of 980s to see how that maybe differed. And as it turned out, there were the potential differences in performance based on the memory division of the 970 get amplified when you add a second graphics card. And it kind of makes sense when you think about it that, right? If you have two, if you have a variance and you multiply it by adding another variance, and you're going to potentially double that, right, or more, right? So you're kind of adding more complication into it. Adding to that is just the fact that multi-GPU, whether it be SLI or Crossfire or whatever, inevitably adds more variance in and of itself, right? It's just kind of the nature of the beast. So as a result, we retested Battlefield 4, retested Call of Duty Advanced Warfare, and showed that there is actually more variance with the 970s and SLI in terms of differences between how the 970 SLI compares to the 980 SLI. And you can see that in, like our Battlefield 4 graphs where we talk about what that frame variance is. For example, a metric we use often is kind of the frame times, and we like to look at the last 10% of frames and how large the variance is, right? So if you look at the worst 10% of frames, the worst 10% of instances where there is variance between frame to frame times, that goes from, with all the settings maxed out to kind of still an obscenely high manner. The frame variance with the 980s is like 5 to 7 milliseconds. And with the 970s, it's up to 18 milliseconds or so. That's a very big difference. And 18 milliseconds is something you would absolutely notice as stutter or hitching. Now, to be fair, that's running Battlefield 4 at 6K resolution, right? 4K plus 150% super sampling. It's there. We can make it happen. It's not a very useful, individual user experience, right? Nobody would ever really do that, even with 2 GPUs. And then in Battlefield, and then in Call of Duty Advanced Warfare, the numbers show, very similar frame time variances between the 2 configurations. But the actual experience I had was worse on the 970s than it was on the 980s in terms of just walking through the game and playing it. But again, this is maximizing everything, enabling super sampling in the game. I think we had 2x super sampling enabled in the game in those particular settings. So, the problem is amplified more when you're running an SLI. And I think that's an absolutely fair statement to make in terms of the user experience and how maybe the division of a 3.5 gigabyte and a 0.5 gigabyte memory pool affects performance. I just feel like the more and more I look at it, the more we mess around with stuff, is that you kind of have to be trying to get there to see it. And my recommendation or opinion on the 970 cards doesn't really change. Now, AMD did some stuff this week that's kind of interesting in that they lowered the price of their 290X. Their highest end single GPU graphics card you can now buy for $299, which is $30 less than the 970. Wow. And they were doing like a marketing campaign on Twitter where if you use the hashtag I want my 4 gigabytes, they gave one away every hour for 970 minutes, right? I think is what it was, right? So GTX 970, 970 minutes. They're trying to cash in as they should from the marketing side, but if there are people who find these specific cases where that affects them, then it affects them, and make that decision what you want to do. Do you want to sell off your cards, or do you want to upgrade to 980s, or do you want to abandon NVIDIA and go over to the Radeon side? That's totally up to you. I just think that those cases are very, very, very rare still. And I don't think in the future suddenly we will see a drastic shift in how graphics memory is utilized in like 2015's PC games that would make it more common than it is today.
That's a good thing. We got an interesting question in the chat room. JJ to the 4884 quote: "Does this issue ruin G-Sync?"
No, it doesn't. It should have no effect on G-Sync, right? If anything, G-Sync will make it better because G-Sync has the effect of smoothing out any kind of stuttery frame times, right? Whereas before you'd see extra tearing because of scan line changes if you had VSync on, or you would see a little bit more pausing and hitching because you had VSync on. Anything G-Sync would help it. I don't think it's going to fix it all, but it would definitely help it. We've seen that happen with Bioshock Infinite. Before all this happened, Bioshock Infinite had a lot of stutter issues with both AMD and NVIDIA graphics cards, and G-Sync kind of aided that in a significant way. But no, it's not really affected by that.
That's a good thing. Yeah. Fast write-up if you don't want to get all the details. Jeremy wrote up on PCPer.com on the GTX 960 at 2560 by 1440. So it's interesting. So the MSI GTX 960 Gaming 2G is about $220, which is similar to an R9 280 or a 280X or 290 if you catch it on sale. Pretty competitive at 1080p. Hard OCP explored, quote, the performance of this card by testing it at 2560 by 1440 against the GTX 770, 760, the R9 285, and 280X. In some cases, the 280X turned out on top, while in others, the 961, especially when GameWorks features like God Rays were enabled. You know, so if you're shopping in this price range, I think it's a very good article to be looking at. Quote, says Hard OCP, "Our conclusion may differ from other websites' final conclusions, especially after this evaluation. The GeForce GTX looks much better from a performance versus price perspective after looking at these high resolution and higher end card comparisons." So I'm not going to read any more out of that to drive people over to hardocp.com because Kyle did the work. We should get him the traffic. But it's an interesting part at a really interesting price. And they did a pretty large complement of graphics. Sorry, I got caught looking at a chart from Tomb Raider, but, you know, Battlefield 4, Far Cry 4, Watch Dogs, Crysis 3, Tomb Raider, and they took a look at power consumption. So if you're shopping in that 200-ish, 225-ish price range, GTX 960 is starting to look really strong, especially at slightly higher resolutions. glNext initiative unveiled its Game Developers Conference 2015. Scott Michaud wrote this up for PC Per. Are we excited about the next OpenGL?
I think so. I think in a similar way to what DirectX 12 is promising to do, the next OpenGL is going to do that. But it will, in theory, actually address more areas than DirectX 12. So DirectX 12 is only a Windows thing, or Windows plus Xbox, I guess, if you want to look at it that way. Whereas OpenGL will be, you've got PC gaming, you've got mobile gaming, you have Android, you have PS4, you have WebGL, right? Like all of those things I think are going to be wrapped up into this new initiative for OpenGL that will put more emphasis on, you know, processor efficiencies, and I think they'll probably start to get more into kind of additional feature sets as well when they talk about it at GDC early next month. So I actually think it will be very interesting to see how they address it, because Microsoft has been so forward and outgoing about DirectX 12, you know, kind of as a follow-up to what AMD did with Mantle there. So it'll be interesting. The talk is being presented by Valve, but it will also include guys from Epic Games, the Unreal Engine guys, the Oxide Games guys, EA, DICE, a lot of the people like Oxide and EA group are the DICE guys are the ones who, you know, helped build Mantle, right, with AMD. So I'm very curious to see what they have to say in terms of comparing and contrasting it to the next generation of OpenGL. But it won't be long. I guess that's like March 4th or something like that that actual session is taking place. So we'll know more soon, and how that pulls back into Android, right? So Apple has what's theirs called? Metal. They have their kind of low-level API known as Metal.
Mhm.
And Android doesn't really have one that I know of yet. They kind of depend on OpenGL for that, and Google wrote their own Android extension pack stuff to add things like tessellation to it. But a new version of OpenGL that maybe kind of addresses those same issues will likely be on the table and help address the Android market too.
Good to know. Mobile G-Sync confirmed and tested with leaked alpha driver. Alan wrote this up. It has been an abnormal week for us here at PC Perspective. Our typical review schedule has pretty much flown out the window, and the past 7 days have been filled with learning, researching, retesting, and publishing. Last Saturday, January 24th, a few things were brewing. Ryan, you were informed by NVIDIA that the memory layout of GTX 970, the huge, now 168-page overclock.net forum thread about the Samsung 840 EVO slowdown was once again gaining traction, and someone got G-Sync working on a laptop integrated display. And I really like that. I really like that video. Mobile G-Sync, we has it.
I felt snarky at that point in time when I was making that icon, so you know, it happens sometimes. So this is a really complicated story that I'm gonna rather than lament too long here on the show, I will simply say that people should go to PCPer.com and read this story, because the quick version of it is there are notebooks out there that have 980M and 970M mobile GTX graphics in them. Somebody at Asus accidentally sent a driver along to somebody to try to fix another problem, that when you install it, gives you a little pop-up in the right-hand corner that says, hey, G-Sync monitor detected. And you go, well, that's kind of weird because I'm on a laptop and those don't exist yet. So you run through it and you can actually enable the technology, and it works for the most part, right? Like you can play a game, or you can download NVIDIA's own Pendulum demo, and you can see the differences between VSync on, VSync off, and G-Sync. And it all works, right? As somebody who has seen G-Sync more than most anybody outside of NVIDIA, probably, I will say that it works. You get into some complications when you're running at frame rates of under 30. But again, this is a leaked alpha driver on hardware that's not actually supposed to fully support mobile G-Sync. But in our talks with NVIDIA, they did say, because basically the story was that there was a guy who had found this information out and was trying to present it as, oh, look, I hacked the driver and now you can support mobile G-Sync. You can support G-Sync on notebooks pretty much across the board. And so to discount that, NVIDIA had to come out and basically pre-announce through our story. It's like, okay, look, it's not a hacked driver. It's just a driver that wasn't supposed to see the light of day. And we have mobile G-Sync coming in the next couple of months. And what you're seeing is kind of a first iteration of it, and it doesn't work perfectly yet, but we will have more to tell you about it in the near future. So that's kind of what came out of it. Now the debate going forward is the whole idea of a G-Sync module that NVIDIA has always said is a requirement for G-Sync to work properly. There is no G-Sync module in this hardware. If you look at that picture that Burke just had up on the screen, like we tore this whole thing apart. We took every motherboard out, every circuit board out. We took the panel out of the housing. We took the tape up off the top of the T-Con hardware. We looked for anything that would indicate that there was some kind of G-Sync module in place, and there was nothing. So it kind of goes against what NVIDIA had been saying up till this point. But their statements to us along that line were that, you know, in the mobile form factor, they will be able to get a substantial portion of the G-Sync experience without using custom hardware, and instead depending on very specific timing controllers and display controllers, all in line, kind of working together. So it's a very interesting story. It has some highs, it has some lows. It puts some questions forward to AMD. People that are NVIDIA haters are going to find reasons to say that NVIDIA has been lying again. You know, like it was a bad week for NVIDIA, to be perfectly honest. The whole 970 memory issue, and then the potential of G-Sync, you know, leaking out in the form of mobile devices. But I think they had a much better response and answer to the mobile G-Sync issue than they had with the GTX 970 memory issue. So there's at least that for them. But yeah, there's a video on there of Alan and I kind of discussing how it was all discovered and what it all means and how that will change things going forward. But pretty interesting stuff. So if you're in the market for a mobile gaming laptop, you might want to hold off for a couple of months if G-Sync might be a feature you'd want to see in your next machine.
Interesting. We should take a moment to thank our sponsors at lynda.com. Go to lynda.com/twitch for a free 10-day trial. If you're not familiar with lynda.com, I'm horrified and I need to tell you about this. It's really cool. It's a website where you go to learn stuff. That's the simple version. We know you guys like watching video because you're hanging out in the twit world. And, seriously, what are you waiting for? It's time to invest in yourself this year. Learn something new with a free 10-day trial at lynda.com. It's used by millions around the world. They have over 4,500 courses now. Web development, photography, visual design, business, software training like Excel, WordPress, and Photoshop. They get experts in. They let them teach what they know. They add new courses pretty much every week. If you're looking to improve your job skills, to ask for a raise, make yourself more marketable, you're looking for a new job, you want to sort of, gosh, I've always wanted to try video editing. This is a place to go learn from experts. It's pretty cool. It's cool. If you miss Bertman Roy, he's got a new Pixel Playground series that's up weekly, up and running with the Google Cloud platform. Will teach you how to develop and host apps and websites, analyze data, create and manage cloud-based databases, all using the Google Cloud platform. They've got a whole setup on setting up a small office network. If you're looking at your network performance and thinking, I need help, but I don't want to go get an IT degree, this is a pretty amazing website. I've been through their websites, looking at video. It's awesome. Smart people teaching you how to do stuff is always a good thing. So do us a favor, invest in yourself, sign up for a free 10-day trial at lynda.com. That's lynda.com, lynda.com. But do us a favor, go to lynda.com/twitch. With your membership, you'll get unlimited access to every course on lynda.com, including access on your iOS and Android devices. New courses as they're added every week. You get all the courses you want. If you want to give up sleep and watch lynda.com 24 hours a day, they are down with that. Just do us a favor. Go to lynda.com/twitch to try it free for 10 days if you do. And you will be supporting us. You will be learning good stuff for yourself. And seriously, go ahead. I challenge you to learn something new with our friends at lynda.com. So I don't know if drooling's the right word, but very curious about the Gigabyte BRIX boxes. They had a whole rack of them at Intel Developer Forum, and the specs sound pretty awesome. You guys got to take a look at the S BXi7H-5500 Broadwell ultra compact PC review, which typed out at 12 points is actually, I think, longer on each side than the actual Gigabyte BRIX box. Is this a gaming system? Is this a desktop system? What can you get out of this little machine? Because I think BRIX's goal is to have more oomph inside the box than Intel does with the Nooks.
That tends to be what they aim for. This is not a gaming machine. It's not a gaming device, and it's not a pro device, right? So the last generation, Gigabyte had a BRIX Pro that was Haswell with Iris Pro graphics. They released a couple of BRIX devices that had discrete NVIDIA, I think GTX 760 mobile graphics chips in them. Now the problem, those worked just fine. The problem was that in a small space like that, the one on the far right there is actually the BRIX Pro Haswell. In a small space, I think that was like a 45 or a 65 watt TDP part, which means it got hot, which means there had to be a fan, and it had to spin, and it had to spin quickly, and it was loud. The new BRIX that we're looking at here, which the specific model number is appropriately named the BXi7H-5500, is actually based on Broadwell. So it's the new Broadwell U processor that was just announced at CES. It is the Core i7-5500, which is a dual-core hyper-threaded part with the graphics is actually branded HD 5500 as well. So you get an upgrade on the graphics side for sure. Clock frequencies are actually pretty comparable to parts from Haswell there. But I mean, the overall specifications are, as they were showing on the table, you get a Broadwell dual-core hyper-threaded processor. You're getting, it's a bare bones system. So you have to add your own memory. You have to add your own storage. But it does come with a Intel 3160, 802.11ac, and Bluetooth M.2 module in there. But you'll have to add your own DDR3L memory. And then it has both an mSATA and a standard 2.5-inch hard drive, like regular SATA capability as well, kind of built into the chassis. So despite its pretty small size, you can actually fit a laptop size hard drive in there in addition to an mSATA SSD if you want.
Nice.
It's got gigabit internet. It's got HDMI. It's got 4 USB 3.0 ports, mini display port. It's got quite a bit of connectivity, again, for a device that measures, where do I have it here? 1.84 inches tall by 4.25 inches by 4.5 inches. So a very small device that packs a lot of punch. It is essentially the ultrabook hardware for Broadwell U, right? So all these ultrabooks that are going to come out, something like maybe like the Dell XPS 13, they're all going to have very similar hardware to what you get inside this. Now that it also has on the top an NFC reader or NFC controller, I guess, if you will, that will allow you to read and write NFC. Not entirely useful yet. It's a great idea. But right now, their application only lets you either open a local file or open a web address when you program an NFC chip to it. But it's there. Inside, it is bare bones, but only in the sense that you've got to add storage, you've got to add memory. Those are the things you have to. We tested it with a Kingston 120 gig mSATA drive and 8 gigs. I think it was 8 gigs of Kingston HyperX, DDR3L. Memory, which is the low voltage stuff. But you can see you can put a 2.5-inch hard drive in there if you want. So you could have, you could put a 250 gig SSD in there for, your primary drive, and then have a 2 terabyte, 2.5-inch drive, and have essentially a fully functioning, fairly high performance PC in this 4.5-inch by 4.5-inch square, which is really, really cool. They're not cheap is kind of the primary drawback to it, right? The MSRP of this unit in its bare bones form was $509. And if you add the memory and SSD that we added, you're looking at $750 total for the system. So it's not even though it's small, it's not a budget machine in really any respect. A lot of people that are listening to this or watching will say, I can build a DIY machine for $750 to $800. It's going to be better performing than this, and maybe even have discrete graphics for gaming. And you would be absolutely right, but that's not really the target that this is going after. This is, small business that you want to have. You don't have a lot of space. You want that machine to sit on top of your desk. It's not going to be loud. This is significantly quieter than most of the other bricks we have used. You can mount it to the back of a monitor, back of a TV, put it in a home theater. Like I said, put it in an office setting, put it in a school setting, and it will, be very reliable and solid in those places. And you're getting a 25 or so on average percent CPU performance upgrade compared to the last generation with Haswell, right? If you look at the Core i5 4250U, which was in a ton of ultrabooks, you're looking at about 25 to 30% increase in performance, depending on the test. Compared to those devices. So you're getting what I think is, as long as you're not doing video editing, you're not doing gaming, you're not doing like high-end database work or something, like this is going to be a very competent system to replace a lot of desktop users' hardware, but in a neat, cute, but somewhat expensive form factor at the same time. We do also have the Intel NUC based on Broadwell in-house, so that'll be our next kind of review and test item going up. So that'll be interesting to kind of see how they compare in that way.
Good to know. Razer Blade gaming laptop refreshed 2015. Scott wrote this up at PC Per. Quote, when the Razer Blade launched, it took a classy design and filled it with high-end gaming components, which, by the way, is really rare in some cases when you're looking at gaming laptops. I'm just saying, there's a lot of loud gaming laptops and not in the audio sense. Its competitors in the gaming space were often desktop replacements, continues Scott, which were powerful but not comfortable everyday laptops. The Blade was brutally expensive when it came out, $2,800. It has been refreshed, and the new QHD has a 14-inch 3200 by 18 display, multi-touch LED backlight. It's an IGZO panel, which is pretty cool. Basically, it's going to deliver something similar to IPS quality. The housing, it's a really nicely built laptop, like 7/10 of an inch thick, a little under 3/4 of an inch thick, milled aluminum chassis. So it's going to have kind of an old school MacBook feel to it. 150 watt power brick, which Scott points out might be for fast charging rather than its actual charging needs. But it's pretty cool. GeForce GTX 970 with 3 gigabytes of VRAM, which is up from the 870M. Core i7 4720 HQ, up from a 4702. It's now 16 gigabytes standard, up from 8. 3 USB 3.0 ports, HDMI 1.4, 802.11 ABGN, and AC, Bluetooth 4.0, and a backlit keyboard, of course. M2 SSD options include 128 gigabytes, 256 gigabytes, or 512 gigabytes, and that takes the price from $2,200 up to $2,700 if you want 512 gigs of storage. Not cheap, but now available at the Razer Zone in the US and around the world, and will be showing up in Microsoft stores in a week or two. But that's a nice piece of kit for $2,200 if you're looking for a badass gaming machine with lots of green highlights and backlights. So heads up, should you be looking for something to do your gaming in a mobile fashion. ARM introduced Cortex A72, Mali T880, and more. Where are these going to end up, man?
Well, I mean, this is a 2016 product, probably second half of 2016 product. Realistically, this is one of the interesting things about how the mobile market, like ARM and Qualcomm, do things, actually, especially ARM, because they design an architecture, and then their partners like Samsung or Qualcomm or NVIDIA build processors based on that architecture, and then there's a lead time between that and you actually see a product on the shelf. So this is why you tend to see announcements of things that'll be out in the year 2016 or whatever from ARM. So this is going to be a flagship premium mobile experience, right? So think super high-end phones like Galaxy Note series, or probably going into some tablets as well. They compare in performance to the Cortex A15 instead of like the A57, which is what I kind of would have wanted to see, because the A57 is the current kind of high-end 64-bit part. This is a 64-bit part as well, but is just kind of the next iteration of, I guess. So they say it's 3.5 times performance of a Cortex A15 core, but using 75% less energy for the same workloads, right? This is kind of like the quicker to idle type mentality there. But then they also announce and talk about new graphics as well, the Mali T880, which has a less substantial but probably still very impressive 1.8x estimated performance improvement over the T760, and again improving energy efficiency. You know what we don't get out of this, they do say it has support for like DRM 4K content that will obviously be, you know, I assume it will be more prevalent in 2016 than it is today. But what you don't see in this is kind of like what parts is this going to be in? Is this going to be in the next generation Tegra? Will this be in a Qualcomm part? You know, both Qualcomm and NVIDIA have announced Cortex A57 plus A53, big little combination SoC. But as far as we know, both of those companies are working on custom architectures in the 64-bit ARM ecosystem for their next products. So will this be the next step after that? Maybe it's kind of hard to say, but this is definitely built for phones, like super high-end phones going into tablets. If Windows RT still existed, maybe into that market as well. But it is not doing so. It looks like they're targeting 16 nanometer FinFET process, according to what Josh wrote up here. So that kind of gives you an idea of where that process technology is in relation to the SoC design and where it will all match up. So we still haven't seen 20 nanometer stuff yet. So again, far-flung future of 2016.
And you know, they got to start building the envelopes that get wrapped around these parts now. So that's part of why they start so early. I thought it was interesting. One of the things Josh noted, the brand new design ARM V8-A instruction set. So it's a 64-bit capable processor. He notes it's also backwards compatible with 32-bit applications set up for ARM V7 processors. And it looks like it's going to be fast. The ARM's going to get faster over time. You know, you could say the same thing about Intel.
Right.
Or at least you would hope. MediaTek MT6753, 64-bit, 8-core system on a chip announced. And of course, I have the link to this smartphone product roadmap. We're seeing, I want to say mostly in less expensive phones, the MediaTek parts showing up. Is this obviously a more high-end move for them?
It's kind of interesting because it's a what they call it is a true octa-core, which means it's not a big plus little design. It's not 4 big cores, 4 small cores, which you could brand as octa-core, but it's kind of not really. This is actually 8 smaller cores. So the diagram's pretty hard to read. The screenshot we had there was fairly small, but it is an 8. It is 8 Cortex A53 processors that range from 1.3 to 1.5 gigahertz. But it's only I mean, the MediaTek line is interesting because they're targeting the China market for the most part. So you're looking at, like, they list the feature set as HD 720 display, right? Not exactly what would be considered a high-end product, over here in the States.
But as Scott points out, like, MediaTek showed up in the Amazon Fire HD tablets.
Right.
They're it's not like they're designing stuff out of the dark. I mean, Scott points out ARM's Cortex CPUs, ARM's Mali GPUs, Imagination Technologies Power VR GPU. So they're not going too crazy and trying to design something. They're just trying to do a stable, inexpensive ARM design. It'd be interesting to see. Quote, everyone seems to agree on the chip's networking capability, though. It will directly support LTE protocols for both China and Western markets. This is expected to make them more competitive against Qualcomm, which might lead to more interesting designs. And shipping next quarter. So I smell a tablet application for this.
Yeah, and yeah, I think so, right? And to be honest with you, I think companies like this, if they're going to make products like this, need to demonstrate a need for 8-threaded workloads in mobile devices, whether it be phones or tablets or whatever, right? So we already have the debate, like Apple still is a dual-core SoC, and I think Qualcomm is mostly, if you look at their 801 and 805s, those are dual-core SoCs, and we're just now starting to get into the quad core, and the question will be, how well do they balance it? How well does it affect power efficiency and battery life and all that? And then once you move up to 8-core, now you're doubling it again. You're making it doubly complex, maybe more so, for how that software needs to go. So if we had a tablet environment where you were super multitasking, you could make the case for it then. But the question will be will they be able to demonstrate that with to demonstrate it to warrant the need for 8 true cores in a mobile device.
Maybe in the China market, more cores is the equivalent of more megahertz used to be when you were walking into PC stores.
Yeah.
It may be as simple as that. Oh my goodness. Speaking of simple, the box that Ryan desperately wants on his desktop right now. The Naturebox, ladies and gentlemen. Naturebox.com/twit to start your free trial. Ryan, would you care to discuss the joys of the Naturebox? Snacks.
Yes. So snacks, healthy snacks. This is something that I can absolutely 100% relate to needing. As somebody who is known to be an unhealthy snacker, I am notorious for, if my wife goes to the store and brings home a box of cookies, it doesn't matter. I will eat all of the cookies in a very short period of time. So the solution to that is to load yourself up with healthy alternatives instead, right? So Naturebox is that answer, right? They're giving you a chance to get a complimentary trial box of their most popular snacks, and you only pay $2 for shipping for this. When you're looking for a quick pick-me-up, say your show is starting late and you're getting a little tired, maybe you need a little energy to keep you going late into the night on a Thursday to talk about computer hardware. You can do that with the Naturebox products. When you're looking for that, you can get delicious healthy snacks at naturebox.com. They have hundreds of delicious nutritionist-approved snacks. They've got 0 artificial flavors, colors, sweeteners, no trans fats, and no high fructose corn syrup. You can even find snacks with the bold flavors you crave. So in the afternoon when you're hungry, do what I will do soon. Grab chocolate banana chips or Kung Pao pretzels or lemon pucker pistachios. Got to say that one correctly. You know you're going to snack. Get smart about it with Naturebox. So start your trial today. You get a complimentary sampler box at naturebox.com/twit. Stay full, stay strong, stay awake, stay snacking smarter. Go to naturebox.com/twit. And we thank Naturebox for their support of This Week in Computer Hardware.
They put a lot of delicious in their boxes. That's all I'm going to say.
I mean, they chocolate banana chips. That's what they led with, was chocolate banana chips. How can you say no to something like that? And plus, if I can say it's healthy, then it's even better. I'm good for that.
If I can say it's healthy,
naturebox.com/twit.
that's even better. That's a quote, people. Interesting note here. Apple Watch coming out later this year. It's beautiful. It's aesthetic. Apparently, they're going to give you a sort of jewelry store experience inside the Genius Bar. Who knows what the people behind the watch bar will be called. Watch geniuses. You know, beautiful wrist ornament advisors. I thought it was kind of interesting today that Swatch Group AG, Bloomberg's writing up, will, quote, start selling a smartwatch within the next 3 months, potentially pitting the Swiss maker of colorful plastic timepieces against the debut of the Apple Watch. NFC communications won't have to be charged, the CEO told Nick Hayek. Excuse me, the CEO, Nick Hayek, told Bloomberg Business in an interview. And that Hayek is, quote, ready to go head-to-head with Apple Incorporated, in part because Wall Street analysts are claiming spectacular numbers, like a $10 billion market by 2018, you know, watches that do things beyond tell the time. You know, it's this kind of a turnaround for smart. They didn't seem to think the smartwatch market was going to be legitimate or particularly real, but they've apparently been lining up patents. You know, I'll be curious to see what's going on with this, but it's something. It's interesting. You know, Apple's making some beautiful watches, or what watches that look like they'll be beautiful. You'll have to charge them a lot, which I think it's going to be the early adopter curve. I think on smartwatches is going to be tough. But one of the things that Bloomberg Business notices, luxury good makers, LVMH, Moet Hennessy, Louis Vuitton, Richemont have been dipping a toe into the market. Tag Heuer is coming out. So I think it's going to be interesting. I think Swatch is going to be like, bink, I'm going to pay for something with the NFC communication as a primary use. But a lot of pretty big watch companies are thinking they can compete in this space. I think it's going to be interesting to see what they interpret it as, and how many of them will actually have a watch that will tell time without being charged every 24 hours. Another interesting article that's a little more touchy-feely than we usually get on This Week in Computer Hardware is in the style section, which is where Nick Bilton currently writes. Nick Bilton wrote the tech column for the tech coverage for the New York Times, and he wrote a really interesting article, Why Google Glass Broke. Quote, this is the story that involves lots of public intrigue, a futuristic wearable technology, a secret laboratory, fashion models, skydivers, and an inter-office love triangle that ended a billionaire's marriage. This is the story of Google Glass. And it's a really interesting point because Google Glass was it. It was the future. It was stylish. It was fashionable. It was everywhere in social media. And now the trial has officially been canceled, and the whole project, or what remains of it, has been handed to the team that runs Nest. So apparently the Google Glass thing did not take off the way that Google had hoped for. It's an interesting read if you want to look at how super high profile products can get launched. They did another one a few years ago, not Nick Bilton, but another writer that talked about sort of the launch, the debut of the iPhone. And that's another spectacular read when you look at people trying to create something fairly radical or fairly new, or just, you know, even if you could claim like, oh, they took a bunch of old cell phone technology and a screen technology and just threw batteries into the earpieces. Well, that's That's not trivial to make even a small number of objects. So I kind of get curious about sort of the backstory behind how new things like the iPhone or Google Glass kind of come to fruition. It's a good read if you get some time to do that. Alan Malventano noticed on the PC Per podcast yesterday some new items coming on sale February. Gosh, where did it go? There was dates on this, ladies and gentlemen. There it is, 2/12/2015, the Plextor M6E. Black Edition, PX 128, 256, and 512 M6E BK, half height, half length, 128 through 512 gigabyte PCI Express 2.0 by 2 internal solid state drives. Does he expect the performance on these to be just as delightful as the looks? Or
probably. I think he just finished writing that review tonight, so I don't know what the answer is exactly. I think I think the secret is that it's really going to perform very similar to the M.2 version of that exact SSD, but this has a shiny heatsink. I mean, we have it here, and when I say that, it sounds pretty derogatory, but it actually looks really cool. And if you're going to put one of these in a system, you know, then you probably want it to look pretty cool. And it has like a backplate on it. And it's got a heatsink that's probably not really necessary. It's not generating enough heat for that. It has an external power connector that I think is not really necessary. But if it performs well and it happens to look cool at the same time, and it's not prohibitively expensive compared to other PCI Express SSDs, that's all that really matters. But I think next week we'll actually have a full review of that exact product on the site, so we'll be able to talk about that next week. I mean, it just looks kind of cool. I don't know what that VIP thing is. That's kind of weird, but like the box looks cool. Like it's a coated backplate. Like it's a black backplate on it. It's not just like crappy chrome. If you got a black and red motherboard, it kind of matches and looks pretty cool. I think that's neat. And I know that there are a ton of enthusiasts out there that buy I don't want to say crap, but they buy stuff for less impressive reasons than that. Right, very often.
Right.
So it's worth considering for sure.
Oh my goodness. We should give a shout out to prosper.com/twit. Receive a $50 Visa prepaid card when you get a loan. Not a lot of great ways to get a loan when you need it. Friends, family, credit card companies, traditional bank loans, sure. But now there's an option for a low fixed rate loan with prosper.com. They're saying it's a better way. You can borrow up to $35,000 in as few as 5 days and use the money for just about anything you desire. Pay off your high-rate credit cards, fix up your house, put it in your business. They have essentially created an online marketplace that connects people who need money with people who want to invest money. So you can get if your credit cards are racking up insane amounts of debt because of those monthly credit card charges, pay them off with Prosper. And to check your low rate instantly without affecting your good credit, go to prosper.com/twit. And if you get a loan through prosper.com, and do us a favor, go to prosper.com/twit. That's a special site just for viewers. You'll get a $50 Visa prepaid card. It's really simple, up to $35,000 in just 5 days, and a $50 Visa prepaid card if you go to prosper.com/twit. So if you're looking for a loan to help carry things through, you got another option out there.
Very cool.
Twitch@twit.tv is the email address, and we should also remind each and every one of you that we want to thank prosper.com for supporting Twitch and the Twit network.
Indeed.
Indeed. Twitch@twit.tv is the email address you can send us questions to. I wanted to grab a couple quick ones out of the chat room that I saw. Morpheus XP, Patrick, do you think it would be okay to put the Windows 10 Tech Preview on my main machine yet? I've been running the Windows 10 Tech Preview on my main machine or my desktop here since the Windows 10 Preview came out. I used to play in traffic when I went to college in New York City because we didn't have money to do anything else. And, it's very exciting to run a skateboard in traffic in New York City during rush hours. So that's my way of saying I am probably less risk averse with my primary machine, mostly because forcing myself to run Windows 10 Technical Preview on my primary machine gives me I'm very intimate with the operating system at this point. if it is your only machine, I would not recommend running Windows 10 Technical Preview on it unless you back things up religiously, just in case. It seems to be extremely solid. I did have it sort of randomly blue screen on me and restart itself a couple days ago, but that's probably the only Windows 10 related glitch I've had on the laptop since I've been running Windows 10. It does seem to be very solid. That said, it is a technical preview. It is not even really a beta at this point. And, if this is your life, if this is your work life, if this is your only PC, I would not recommend running a beta operating system on it, at least not without maybe imaging your current system and, again, making sure you back up your critical data on a regular basis, just in case things go horrendously wrong. Because, as Ryan will attest, occasionally things do go horrendously wrong with a new operating system. Usually right before your term paper, work presentation, tax filings. It's a Murphy's Law. Anything that can go wrong will go wrong at the worst possible moment.
I will say I'm running the latest tech preview on. We have a machine that kind of sits on the wall. It's an all-in-one that sits on the wall that we that's how we input things that show up in the office and who's working on which projects or whatever. Sure. I have had it inadvertently think I'm talking to it. The Cortana part of it, like Alan and I will be having a conversation and it'll say, I'm sorry, I can't find the answer to that. And I'm kind of like, we both look at each other. So we have that. And then we have the Amazon Echo, and then we have our phones. And really at any given point during the day, any computer will just talk back to us for some random reason that we didn't attempt to interact with. And it's actually kind of pretty funny. But I will say my interaction with it has been all positive, just like yours. I mean, I really like what they've done so far. Even though it's not my everyday like working machine all the time. I'm still pretty happy with what they have so far.
No, it's running extremely well. The performance is excellent. Some of the icons seem like they're not finished. That's my big criticism at this point.
If that's the biggest you got, that's not bad.
Well, and there were also some funny, there were some control panel issues. If I try to, that have been resolved in the latest edition of the technical preview. Simple stuff like as petty as this may sound, I work in like 3 or 4 different locations, and that requires changing networks between 3 or 4 different locations, which could be, or if I need to turn off the Wi-Fi to switch to another test device, it was kind of a difficult process because I had to dig through a couple extra clicks in the earlier versions of Windows 10 Technical Preview. So if that is, that's probably pretty petty as far as a complaint on a beta or a pre-beta on an operating system goes. But I like it. I like what they're doing with the menuing systems. I like the performance. I think it's going to be interesting to see where it progresses between now and the gold version, which I will probably run on my system when that comes out. Yep. iPhone 52409. Patrick Norton, is it just me? I seem to have seen that the 970 doesn't have HDMI 2.0.
That's not correct. If your GTX 970 has an HDMI port, it is an HDMI 2.0 port. Maxwell GM204 and GM206 both support HDMI 2.0. So I don't know if you have more details on somebody who's reporting that, maybe somebody that has a 970 hooked it up to a TV and doesn't work with HDMI 2.0. Send me a link. You can email us twitch@twit.tv, or you can send it to just me or whatever you want to do, or put it in chat here now. I'm very curious about that because I did just a couple weeks ago buy a TV with a 4K TV with HDMI 2.0 for my house. So I'm looking forward to building a new home theater PC of some kind to set up and hook up to that. And I was planning on using a 970 in that build because of that capability as well. So I'm interested in that. But as far as I know, every 980 or 970 or 960 now that has an HDMI port will do HDMI 2.0, so 4K at 60 hertz at full color gamut. So
good to know.
Yep.
One last one more question before we go. Brad has been agonizing over an upgrade decision. He writes, I call upon you after 6 months of indecision, and I'm seeking your consultation. Upgrade my rig built in 2010 for a few more years of service, or hit the PC Perspective hardware leaderboards and start new. His current rig is an Asus M4A79 XTD Evo AM3 motherboard. He's got a Phenom 2X 965 Black Edition Deneb quad-core 3.4 gigahertz processor, a pair of Radeon HD 5770 video cards, 8 gigs of DDR3 RAM, a Samsung 840 EVO. I use the PC for some moderate gaming and software development, no video editing or encoding. I do need my video cards to drive my 2 Dell E2414HX24 displays. I am of the AMD faithful, so please let us stay in that realm. I have been contemplating getting a new video card, a pair if necessary, and also I'm interested in your options of adding an SSD with a PCI Express interface. You know, if you do decide to wipe the slate and start over again, certainly, you know, depending on which chipset and processor you choose, the 8 gigabytes of G-Skill is going to be fine. The Samsung 840 is going to be fine.
5770s are long in the tooth.
Yeah,
sure.
It's funny. I was actually thinking they are long in the tooth is exactly the phrase that was in my head. They are getting aged.
Yeah, they're aged for sure. You know, I mean, to be honest with you, you could probably get a single Radeon R9 290X today. And like I said, there's several of them that are selling for $299 after rebate and get noticeably better performance than the two of those cards without the complications of Crossfire. And then if you do decide you want more performance, you can add another $299 290X on top of that if you want. He doesn't give me a price restriction here, I don't think. But you know, the other issue is obviously your processor and motherboard. He says he's of the AMD faithful, so he wants to stay in that realm. The AMD Phenom 2X4 965 is one of those processors that stuck around way longer than anyone expected because it was a tremendous performer and overclocker, and they didn't really replace it with anything else to overtake it in those realms, right? So if you're looking to upgrade your processor and you want to stay in the AMD realm, you're really looking at something like the AMD FX 8350. Which I'm trying to remember what motherboard he's got there. You'd have to upgrade your motherboard probably. You probably should, regardless. Like if you upgrade your motherboard now, you'll get things like, you know, you'll get USB 3.0 ports that you probably didn't have before, and added support for extra things like that. But yeah, your memory will still work. Your SSD will still work unless you want to upgrade that for capacity reasons. And one 290X is going to drive both those Dell monitors without an issue. You don't need 2 video cards for that. I would start with that. I would probably start with a graphics card first and try to figure out if you are CPU limited in anything that you're actually doing, right? I think you will see your biggest performance gain in your gaming side by upgrading those 5770s, getting those out of there and putting something newer in. And then for the software development side, I do think you will see performance improvements with the FX 8350. You could go crazy and go with the what is it, the FX 96 or 9800, the one that had like a 200 watt TDP, the 4 gigahertz part. You could do that. I don't think that's the best option for most people. But an FX 8350 is technically an 8-core part, 4 modules, 8 cores. And you would see improvements there. I don't think they'd be nearly as substantial as the graphics side, but you would see improvements there as well. Plus, like I said, motherboard accessories that way.
I'm gonna ask just because I ask questions like this, but how's the 8350 going to compare to a mid-range Core i5? Obviously, Core i5 is going to have fewer cores. So if you're massively multi-threading, the 8350 has advantages. But in terms of pure like single dual core processing power, how's the 8350 compare to a Core i5?
I mean, the Haswell parts are faster, right? If for the 8350, actually, let me double check one thing here on the pricing there, because the 8350 is coming up at $179, right? Which is super cheap for what you get. I actually, looking at that, I would say that if you went to the equivalent $179-ish Intel part, you would get much better power efficiency, but you wouldn't necessarily get better performance. You'd get, especially multi-threaded performance, you would get better single-threaded performance almost assuredly. But for anything, 2, 3, 4 and above thread count, the AMD part's going to be a little bit faster. So, if you're worried about that, and he already said he kind of wants to stay with the AMD side. But for everybody else out there, it's a debate we have all the time, right? The 8350 is a perfectly fine part, but it's 125 watt TDP. You could probably get a Core i5 that's like a 65 watt TDP part from Intel that's going to have better single-threaded performance and maybe lack a little bit in the multi-threaded performance. But then their platforms tend to be updated more frequently as well. So if you've got a Z97 board, you're going to get USB 3, SATA Express. You're going to get some more capabilities there. Maybe Thunderbolt if you wanted something like that. Not a whole lot of people do, but if you did, it was there. But I don't think there's anything wrong with looking at the 8350. You could check and see. Go to that motherboard page, check for the latest BIOS, see if you can actually maybe plop that $179 part into that motherboard. I'm not sure, but it wouldn't take much research to figure out for sure. The M4A79 XTD Evo. I mean, go to Asus's support site, look up the processor support guide, get the most recent BIOS for it, UEFI, if you will, and you should, I don't know, it is an AM3 socket, so the potential is there for it. I'm just trying to click fast enough to get an answer, but the Asus website's not exactly speeding along for me here. So you'll have to do that on your own. You have to go to the support site and figure that out. But it's possible. It's possible. No, here it goes. CPU support. Let's click on that real fast. Nothing's happening very fast for me. Okay, Athlon X2. So if I do 8350, is not showing up in this list. So no, because I think you need an AM3 Plus board for that. So you would need to get a new motherboard. But those are the options. Those are the directions I'd give you, taking steps forward.
But it seems like there's a good, solid AMD upgrade path for Brad.
There is. There definitely is, right? I mean, yep, without a doubt.
Your next CPU in 4 more years.
After that, we'll see. We can only go with what we have now. Yeah.
Anything you can tease us coming up on PC Per the next week?
We have those two new cool Dell products from CES. We have the XPS 13 that I have here, which is a super nice laptop. And then we also have the Dell Venue 8 7000, which is an Android tablet, which has probably the best screen I've ever seen on a device like this. It's an OLED 25 by 16 screen in an 8-inch form factor. It's awesome looking. It's substantial. And then tomorrow, by the time this is up, we should probably have our story posted that looks at overclocking 13 different GeForce GTX 960 cards to give you an idea of what that range of overclocking capabilities should be. So lots of stuff coming up. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. I can be found now no longer at Techzilla. I'm at TechThing, TechThing.com. And we have our RSS feeds up. So if you've been looking to subscribe through iTunes, actually the iTunes link is hopefully up by now. It was submitted. It was approved this morning. We're waiting for it to percolate through the iTunes podcasting universe. But we're pretty excited about that. We talk about the PC Toolkit and why for typical PC users, you may only need one tool in your toolkit. But as soon as you get to laptops, especially Mac laptops, things get more complicated.
That's a good screen grab. It's a good screen grab.
Yeah. Well, that was actually, I should point out the episode I'm talking about gets posted tomorrow since it's in rendering hell right now. But yeah, actually, it turns out I found a $40 drone, my first drone. I found a $40 drone thanks to Darren from Hack5 on neither one of those, by the way, is the $40 drone. But it's amazing. I like the Parrot AR until you try to use it a lot or try to transfer those skills to something else like that DJI Phantom, which is the propellerless quad right there. Yes. That is, apparently Darren had a bit of an accident with that one, and now it has no wings.
I see.
Yeah, Darren's got a bit of a completely unhinged drone habit, quadcopter habit right now. But it's a fun episode. So do me a favor, if you're looking for some technology content, please go out techthing.com, TEKTHING.com. We want to thank everybody for listening, for subscribing, for looking. If this is your first trip to the Twitch universe, do us a favor, find the rest of our videos at twit.com/Twitch. You'll have all the information you need.
Nope, wait. Twit.tv/Twitch.
What did I say? Don't tell me. It'll be too mortally embarrassing to bear. Twit.tv/Twitch. This child rearing thing just eats at my brain. The children ate my brain. Twit.tv/Twitch. You'll get all of our previous episodes, and there are over 300 of them by the time you're watching this. And you can learn how to subscribe to the show. And we want to thank our sponsors, and like I said before, each and every one of you for listening and watching. I'm Patrick Norton.
I'm Ryan Shrout.
We'll see you next week on Twitch.